Hello, I want to welcome you to this course titled The Number One Growth Opportunity for Small Businesses. And it is the federal government market. Now, some of you are probably already thinking of tuning out, but don't do that. This is no joke, and this isn't just my opinion, though I've helped lots of companies really grow their business in the government market. This isn't just my opinion. And you'll see that as we go along here. So I encourage you just to stick with me. And I think if you'll hang there a few more minutes, you'll be motivated to listen to the whole thing and seriously consider selling to the federal government yourself. I just want to talk a little bit about the scope of this class. You know, this is a brief class, so I'm not going to be able to dive real deep on the things I'm talking about. So I do want to let you know what the scope of it is. What I want to do is show you that the government market really is and I mean you as a business owner. If you have a small or medium-sized business, this is your number one growth opportunity. You can't take a shot unless you know what the target is. So I want to let you know what that target is, and the target is the federal government market. Okay, another part of the scope of this class is to introduce you to the 7-step path to winning government contracts. These are 7 steps that, whether they know it or not, all businesses go through if they're going to succeed in selling to the federal government. You know, you may have heard people say, how do you eat an elephant? An elephant's big. Well, the government market's big. How do you eat an elephant? You eat it one bite at a time. These 7 steps, those are the individual bites you take to eat the elephant of selling to the federal government, so to speak. And we'll only be able to touch on each step. I could do, no joke, I could do a one-day seminar on each of the steps we're going to cover. But I do want to show you that the government market is the right path to take to grow your business, and I want to show you the steps to take to eat that elephant, so to speak. This is the way to go, and these are the steps that I take. These are the steps that I take other companies through. So let's proceed. So who am I? Some of you may be wondering. My name is Rick Porterfield. I'm a consultant. Specifically, I'm a consultant. I specialize in helping companies sell to the federal government. I also do business planning and some other things as well. But I have about 37 years of experience in government contracting. So I've been doing this for a long time, almost 4 decades. I started off in procurement with the United States Air Force and did that for several years there. And I went from there to working for 3 major corporations. A couple of them were Fortune 10 businesses, very large businesses. I worked in the government contracting departments there, helping them write proposals and things and manage government contracts. And we won literally hundreds of millions, maybe even billions of dollars worth of contracts doing that. I went from working for them to being in business for myself back in 2001. I've written a book titled The Insider's Guide to Winning Government Contracts, published 17 magazine articles. I was interviewed by Inc. magazine, and I could go on about that kind of stuff, certifications and degrees and whatnot. But really the number one thing, the most important thing to you to know about me is that I've helped hundreds of businesses, small and medium-sized businesses, in many different industries, okay, from construction to janitorial to whatever, just all different industries. I've helped hundreds of them make millions of dollars in government contracting, okay? So I can help you too. So I encourage you to hang in here. This is the end of Lecture 1 on Udemy, so get into Lecture 2 there and find out how this government market can be your growth opportunity that you've been looking for. Thank you. Okay, why sell to the government? I'll tell you, because it is hands down the number one growth opportunity for small businesses. And when I say that, I mean virtually all small businesses. The federal government is enormous. We'll talk more about that in a minute. It's huge. It buys everything. It buys toilet paper and light bulbs. It buys rockets and bombs. It buys everything, okay? This is not an opinion. It's not just my opinion. And I'm going to show you this. Independent research shows this. There's actually been research that shows that the federal government it's the best growth opportunity for small businesses. Experience shows this. I'm particularly talking about my experience. I'll talk a little bit about that and some of the cases I've seen of business growth happening for companies just like yours. And also common sense shows this. I was reading Entrepreneur Magazine, and this is actually from an August 2003 article in Entrepreneur Magazine. And this is the direct quote. They said the best way for a small business to grow is to have the federal government as a customer. You know, if you're a small business person or a medium-sized business person or even a large business person, okay, this is too significant to ignore. You've got me saying this, you've got Entrepreneur Magazine saying this, you've got research saying this, you've got the examples of hundreds and hundreds of businesses saying this. So if you really want to grow your business and you're not afraid to think out of the box and learn something new, then this is the answer you've been looking for. So I encourage you, don't tune out, don't give up because it's the government. Don't think you can't do it, because lots and lots of businesses have done it. They weren't any smarter than you. They didn't sell any kind of a gee whiz product. It was normal stuff. They just chose the federal government as the market, and that government market is so big that they were able to really grow their business. So let's move on here. Okay, so I mentioned this earlier, but research shows that the federal government is the number one growth opportunity for small businesses. Now, there was a study done relatively recently by American Express, okay? And here's what they found. That, you know, there are over 30 million small businesses in the United States, okay? I think there's about 31 million small businesses in the United States. So statistics show, their research found that only 2 out of every 50 of those small businesses will ever hit $1 million in annual sales and annual revenue. Okay, that's just 4%. So 2 out of 50 will ever hit $1 million in annual sales. Okay, but this same study found that of small businesses that target the federal government as a customer, 24 out of every 50 will hit $1 million in annual revenue. Again, that's just too significant to ignore, okay? That's a 48% chance to hit $1 million in average revenue. We went from 4% chance if you don't target the government to a 48% chance if you do. That makes you, just targeting the government, just making them a customer, makes you 12 times more likely to make it to $1 million in annual revenue. That's huge. You know, there is no other market or growth strategy that matches this. Okay, I've racked my brain. Again, I'm a consultant. I've been doing this for 37 years, government contracting and business for myself since 2001 as a consultant. I have seen nothing that matches this. You know, there are the flash in the pans, you know, the Apple computers, the Microsofts, and all these we hear about where they just kind of lightning strikes and they make just a fortune. But for the vast majority of businesses, they're never going to make that $1 million annual revenue mark unless they target the federal government. Okay, this is really a millionaire maker. Let's continue on. You know, again, I'm still talking about how research shows it's the number one growth opportunity. Actually, I'm transitioning here. I'm talking about my personal experience. You know, I've worked with hundreds of clients over maybe, I don't know, several hundred over the last almost 20 years now. And dozens of them, dozens is conservative, there's a lot of them who are now millionaires. They're exceeding $1 million in annual revenue over and over again, year after year. And here's just a few real numbers from clients that I've worked with. And I'll tell you, these are not their real names. I sign confidentiality agreements with clients, so I'm not going to get on here and call out their names. So I've changed their names to protect the innocent, so to speak. They're innocent, but I'm sure you understand what I'm talking about. But there was a guy named Carl, the contractor from Virginia. And when I first met Carl back in 2009, he was doing about $150,000 a year in revenue. Okay, in 2018, he did over $33 million. Okay, that's 9 years later. He did over $33 million. That's tremendous. You know, I'm going to tell you, it is highly unlikely he would have ever seen that kind of increase in revenue had he not targeted the federal government. And he might have went to $500,000 or something from $150,000. He might have done that, but folks, he probably would not have hit that $33 million. There was a gentleman named Sam, a supplier in Florida. They supplied hardware and safety type products to NASA and the Air Force. And when I met them, they were doing about $800,000 a year in revenue, which that's not bad, okay? But after I met them, 2 years later, they had already hit $12 million in revenue, okay? And they've just been doing that year after year since then. John, a contractor from the District of Columbia. Now, this is incredible. Some of you are going to think I'm lying, but this is true. I wouldn't tell something quite this bold if I was going to make it up. But this guy, John, in 2018, did $13,000 in revenue. 13,000. Okay, I started working with them in 2018. And I say I started working with them, but really it's because they targeted the government market, and I just showed them how to do that. So in 2018, they did 13,000. Okay, in 2019, just last year, he did 1.4 million. That's incredible. That's incredible. Another guy named Pat, also from the Washington, D.C. area there in Maryland. I started working with him back in 2017. And in 2017, he paid himself $50,000 in salary from his business, okay? In 2019, the salary he paid himself from his business was $400,000. Okay, I could go on and on and on with these kind of examples. There was a company in the Panhandle of Florida. They did $500,000 one year. I began working with them 2 years later. They did $17.5 million. I could just go on and on and on with these kind of examples. I had a roofing company I worked with. They were doing roughly $1,000 a year, maybe a little more, maybe a little less, each year after year. I started working with them. They targeted the federal government, and the last I heard, they were doing $4 million a year. Just on and on and on. It's not magic. You have to work at this, but it's a pathway that will work for you. It's worked for all these businesses. These people aren't rocket scientists. They're not geniuses. I mean, they're good business people, but you can be as well. You can do the same thing they're doing. So I just want to encourage you with this, that this is a viable growth opportunity for your business, okay? Let's keep going. So common sense shows that the government market is the number one growth opportunity for small businesses. Consider this. You know how, as a small business person, that cash flow is important, and probably I'm a small business person too. Probably you, like me, have had a client you did a lot of work for drag their feet on getting you paid. That's a problem. That is a problem. The government pays its bills. They have certain timelines in which they're supposed to pay by. And they actually have prompt payment clauses in their contracts. They have to pay you within 30 days or whatever. That really helps with cash flow. You know the money's coming. You're not going to be floating it for 60 or 90 days or longer, okay? You're not going to have to do that, okay? So there are even, I think I mentioned this somewhere else, but I'll say it now as well. There are prompt payment clauses. There's prompt payment clauses, but you can also offer prompt payment terms to the government. For example, if you offer the government if you put on the invoice, 1% discount if paid within 7 days. Okay, they're required to try to honor that. Okay, so now if you have a $100,000 invoice you're submitting to the federal government, you put a 1% discount for 7 days, they'll attempt to pay you $99,000, but they're going to do it within that 7 days, okay? So that's another thing to really help cash flow. There are preference programs for small businesses. I've got some acronyms here. Small businesses, MB would be minority businesses. WB, women-owned businesses. VB would be veteran-owned businesses. Okay, so these preference programs, these certifications that you can get, level the playing field and actually give you a competitive advantage in the government market. They have goals for awards to you. They'll set aside contracts that only small businesses and minority businesses and so on can bid on, okay? So it just gives you an opportunity there. Solicitations are open. If you do a lot of work with commercial clients or private clients or whatever, individuals, they can pretty much ask who they want to give them proposals. But the federal government advertises and anybody can bid on those things, okay? Now, when I say anybody, I mean if it's a small business set aside, you'd have to be a small business. If it's a woman-owned business set aside, you'd have to be a woman-owned business. But any woman-owned business can bid. Any small business can bid, etc. So you can't be excluded just on the whims of the client, okay? And also, the federal government is the largest buyer of goods and services in the world. They spend about $525 billion a year on goods and services. That's a big number. It's hard for us to wrap our mind around how much money that is. So let me give you an example. And actually, I heard Ronald Reagan use this example back in the 80s. If you had $1 million in $1,000 bills in your hand, okay, if you had $1 million in $1,000 bills, you'd have a stack of $1,000 bills about 4 inches high. So $1 million is a lot of money, right? That's a lot of money. Okay, so if you had $525 billion in $1,000 bills in your hand, you'd have a stack of money over 80 miles high. That's tremendous. So $1 million would be about 4 inches high. That's a lot of money. So this is just an example to help you get an idea of how much money the federal government is spending every year on goods and services. The stuff you sell, a stack of $1,000 bills over 80 miles high. Now let me say this too. Over $100 billion of that, so what, roughly 20-something miles of that stack of $1,000 bills is set aside for small businesses and minority businesses and women-owned businesses and veteran-owned businesses. It's set aside for you. So how much of that did you get last year? If the answer is 0, then you need to keep listening. This is the end of Lecture 2, so I encourage you, hang around for Lecture 3. Let's talk about this process of eating the elephant. Thank you for listening.